Hey everybody, this is Point Shooter. Today I'll be doing another multi-tool review. Today I'm reviewing the Gerber 400 Compact Sport. This was my original multi-tool. This was a Christmas present to me about 7 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, by my parents, back when I was in middle school. It was a long time ago. And I've had it for that whole period and used it for many years. Now it's since been replaced by other multi-tools, but it still was one that I carried a lot until recently when I picked up my Leatherman Juice, which you've seen a review on here from me before. So let's talk about the Gerber tool. This is a relatively small compact tool. Not quite as small as the Leatherman Juice, but for what you're getting, this is an excellent tool. And I thoroughly enjoyed carrying it, and I still do on occasion. Sometimes backpacking, I'll take this instead of the Leatherman. So let's talk about the main differences between the Leatherman and a Gerber tool. Gerbers, open your pliers from the side. One thing you can do is, I'm not sure if I'm going to show it on camera, but a lot of times you can flick the pliers and get them to come out. The one thing that I like is that just by releasing the buttons, you can usually withdraw the pliers and open it one-handed. With a Leatherman, you can sometimes do that. If you learn how to do it, you have to flip it around. You can sort of butterfly it open. There's a variety of ways to open it. But overall, for one-handed opening, the Gerber really works well. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger than the Leatherman Juice, but at the same point, there are some disadvantages to this Gerber. We'll look at the plier heads. They're pretty comparable. The Leatherman has the polished stainless finish as opposed to Gerber's bead blast. Cutting heads, the Gerber does not have the small hardwire cutter area like the Leatherman does. The plier tips, again, the Leatherman has slightly smaller tips, but one thing I found is that you get a lot better leverage with the Gerber tool because there's no chance of the plier handles coming open like I found with the Leatherman tool. As I mentioned in my previous video, that sometimes you get a material wedged in here, and as you're trying to open the pliers, the handles will open up. Gerber can't do that. Once it's open, they stay where they are. Once it's shut, if you try to open them, you're using your full force against the handles. So let's talk a little bit about the other tools. The scissors. These are genuine Fisker scissors, and for years these were my favorite multi-tool scissors. And in some ways, they still are. We'll compare them with the Leatherman Juice scissors. You can see the Juice scissors are almost twice as long. However, look at how heavy duty these are compared to the Leatherman scissors. The other thing that I like about these is that they have this nice long handle, gives you a lot of leverage. I've cut many heavy duty materials over the years. Leather, webbing, nylon webbing, all sorts of materials. One thing that I used to do was lighting for musicals and stage productions, and we used to use these to cut gels for theater lights all day long, and they work great. They fold up inside the tool, and you put it away. Now the other probably most used tool would be the knife blade. These are Gerber's Mystery Steel. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the 420 HC range, and let's compare it with the blade on the Leatherman. About the same length. Gerber's a little bit longer. It's still under 3 inches, and it's half serrated. Chisel ground serrations, they work very well. They always cut. They don't really rip. You can get these very, very, very sharp. The one thing that I will give an advantage to on the Gerber on all its tools is that they are locking. Gerber locks are actuated by pulling back and releasing the tool. Another advantage, something that some people have said is, oh, well, you get tool clumping with the Gerber. I've never had that where you pull one and all the tools come out. So I would say that as far as knife blades go, the Gerber has an advantage of having a locking blade, which, as I've mentioned, is what I prefer in most situations. Let's talk about the screwdrivers here. You've got the small blade, and we'll compare that against the small blade inside the Leatherman Juice. You can see the small blade on the Gerber is slightly larger than the small blade on the Juice. Again, fold that up. Phillips driver, as compared, about the same size. The Gerber I used for years. You can see there's a good bit of wear on it, taking out P2 drywall screws. You can fit most screws between P2 and P1. Anything above that, though, it's going to be a little small, but that's the exact same with the Leatherman juice. So I'd call the drivers an exact match here. One advantage of the Gerber, though, is you can also buy a 1/4-inch hex adapter that will allow you to use any bit from a standard 1/4-inch tool set, and you can slide that right over the screwdriver bit here and it locks into place. I don't have that toolkit, but I do know friends who have it, and they enjoy that feature, and I think that if I had it, I would use it a lot more. So let's talk about the can opener. Here's another reason I like the Gerber, is the can opener. We'll compare it with the juice here. This can opener I've used for years, and it reminds me of a Victorinox Swiss Army can opener, which I used for many years before I had this tool. My evolution of multi-tools largely I got my first Swiss Army knife when I was in Boy Scouts as a young child. You'll see that reviewed here later. And then I moved up to a Gerber. I had a couple other sort of low-end multi-tools in between, but this was my first serious multi-tool. Overall, I really like the Gerber can opener. The Leatherman works great. I use it all the time. I don't use the Leatherman as much, but one thing I will say, one of the most useful features of this is digging out staples. Again, I used to work in the theater, and we would be taking theater flats apart and have to pull out staples a lot. And what happens is, if you have to dig this out, I've never found a better staple remover. Not even a tack remover like you'd buy from Stanley, any of them. This has worked better than anything. So that's the can opener, and it opens cans just fine. Then we get to the large screwdriver blade. On par with Leatherman, I like the fact that it is locking, and you don't have any chance of coming out. It is the standard chisel ground, like a regular wood screwdriver. One advantage to the Leatherman is that you get a slightly thinner driver that's slightly flatter. So for smaller screws, larger heads but smaller width, the Leatherman may be able to fit. You get a little bit, just about the same reach with the Gerber versus the Leatherman. Then we'll take the micro driver. This is one of the few Gerber models of this age, this one of course being about 8 years old, that had this micro driver. I wear eyeglasses, and the micro drivers are a draw here. They're both identical. I used this one, you can see is slightly bent at the tip from trying to manhandle screws over the years, but it has never broken and it's always worked. I use the Leatherman driver a lot, but I'd say it's an exact draw with the Leatherman versus Gerber. In fact, they look pretty darn similar. Wonder what happened there. So let's talk about the retention of tools inside the Gerber. I really like that all the blades are locking in this tool. Maybe you want to open up your can, you don't have to worry about, as you're popping through, having the blade fold closed on you. Not that you're really going to get hurt from that. Your hand should be out of the way, but when you're talking about a knife blade, oh, that's a big deal for me. That's why I generally only take locking blades with me. Leatherman is a little bit of a compromise in that, because you have to deal with a blade, a slip joint that's very flexible. That Gerber, you're not going to pop that open under any circumstances. Maybe if you started beating on it. I don't think I'd baton with it, but I think you could. I've cut through 1/4-inch Low-on plywood with this before when we had to start a hole for a larger cut, and I used this to score the wood and managed to pop through. Again, not something I'd fully recommend. This isn't made for really doing any serious woodworking, but if you're out hiking around, this would be a great thing to split up your small kindling with. Again, I wouldn't try to baton anything too large. You're not going to be chopping limbs off trees, but it works really well, and it holds a great edge. I sharpened this probably 2 years ago was the last time I even touched it. I've used it plenty since then, and it worked great. It's always been sharp. I've never had any rusting issues with the Gerber. I do keep mine oiled up. I think that I would worry more about the Gerber rusting than the Leatherman. Mostly because I think the Leatherman is maybe a higher quality stainless steel, because as other reviewers like Nut and Fancy have mentioned, we really never hear from Gerber, at least on their older products, what the steel was. So I can't really tell where exactly it is. Oh, well, let me put another interesting feature. For those of you who may work with car electrical systems, look at that. You've got a connector crimper right there. Used it for years and it works great. I don't do a lot of 12-volt work, but the times that I have, this has worked great for crimping down splices, spade connectors, any of that. Sometimes working with computers, you may crimp or working with sound systems, you may crimp an old style wire nut down, and these work great. We'll go into the sheath real quick here. The sheath is excellent with Gerber. Now the only problem is it only has this fixed loop. You can't do you can't switch it side to side, and if you have a belt like a Alice belt, you can't actually slip it over. So if you're going to wear your dress belt or a 2-inch rigger belt, it works fine. It's ballistic nylon. This one's pretty worn because I've had it for so long, but I carried it for years in this pouch and never had a problem. Overall, you're looking around the $30 to $40 range for this Gerber 400. It does come in a black oxide finish. I don't have that, but I've seen it around. They look like they hold up pretty well. I really have always enjoyed having this Gerber. I carried it for years alongside with a AA mini Maglite, and that was really my my primary stage crew kit back when I used to work in the theater. Again, it's made in USA. It's all stainless steel. It's backed by Gerber's warranty. And I've really enjoyed having it. I've never been able to break it. I'd loan it out to people who would be pretty rough on tools, and it would always come back to me in good shape. So if you're looking for an alternative to Leatherman or other multi-tools, SOG, whatever, the Gerber 400 is an excellent multi-tool. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope it helps. Take care, and God bless. Bye.